I'm Karl in Hersvik. Everybody says Kalle. It's only my mother who calls me Karl Johnny. I'm the CEO of Aker BP, and it's of course not that innovative to work in a small oil and gas company if you're Norwegian. However, Aker BP is probably the fastest growing oil and gas company in Norway. And we have, over the last few years, even though we have had probably the biggest recession that we've seen since the Second World War, been able to create in excess of 50 billion NOK in value to our partners, to our shareholders, and to the Norwegian community by utilizing the basic foundations in the oil and gas value chain. One of the things that we realized back in 2014 when the oil price plummeted was that this industry was not really collaborative. We didn't really understand how to collaborate with our vendors and with our partners. And we were taught as leaders that competition was a zero-sum game. Øyvind here had to lose for me to win. And we kept on trying to extract the same margins out of the same value chains without realizing that there was enormous amounts of value to be had by collaborating. And I don't mean collaborating in a very simple way. I mean collaborating in a model that we've come to call hyper-collaboration. So we've experimented a lot with different models over the last couple of years. And one of these models we call alliances. It's where we collaborate with vendors on a very deep and fundamental level. It's what we call a one-for-all, all-for-one model, meaning that success actually means that we all make more profits or turn more revenue, but creating a more productive and less wasteful value chain. So Øyvind, we've been working with your team in Subsea 7 now for a number of years, having completed quite a number of successful projects. What do you think we could do even more on the Norwegian continental shelf, and how would a hyper-collaborative model look like?
Well, I like to use an example. We just, Subsea 7 and Aker BP, we just completed a offshore development, a project offshore called Volund. And on the Volund project, we worked together in an integrated team where we had commercial incentives to improve the output. We had a benchmark and we had a very stretched target for us to meet in terms of cost and schedule. By having the right models and the right incentives in there, we managed to improve more than 30% on that. And that benchmark is not a Norwegian continental shelf benchmark, it's an international benchmark. By working together with these models, we unlocked new values and we accelerated also the development of the field. Actually, we did that project in 9 months less than the previous world record. And the only reason for us achieving this is what Karl is calling the hyper-collaboration model. And your second question was?
How could we improve even more?
How could we improve?
We're never happy, you know.
Yeah. No, I think we have been working on this now for some time. I think if we can expand this also into the wider supply chain, into the whole industry, I think we can achieve more than the 30%. I think that in the long run and the long term, we should probably be able to halve the costs on offshore field developments by taking this to the next step. How does this model look like? What is a hyper-collaborative model? Well, a hyper-collaborative model is a model where there are no losers, and it's not a zero-sum game. There is only winners. I'm a winner, Karl is a winner. And that is because when you unlock this new value and you have the right incentives in there, you can actually all become winners. And that is what we have achieved in this. Important keywords in this is is obviously to learn from each other, share true data, take down the barriers. Don't come with these kind of old ways of working, but be open and also accept to be challenged. Another key word here is early involvement. How many times have we as a company come in far too late? You cannot do anything. Everything is locked. Karl is inviting us in early. Nothing is decided, and by sitting together and sharing these experiences, sharing these data, we can actually achieve much more than the traditional way. On the Norwegian continental shelf, I'd like to say that we have achieved a lot on this collaboration, but it's not the case. Most of our clients are still using the old models, where they generalize, commoditize, and split up everything as much as they can, define it as much as they can, so that as many bidders and tenders as they can for each individual part. That is the old model. There is no room for innovation in that model. You are locked in. The collaboration model unlocks this value and creates win-win. In this collaboration model, the hyper-collaboration model, there are three important questions that we are asking ourselves. One is, what is important? What is important for Aker BP? What is important for Subsea 7 and the other partners? Secondly is, what should we stop doing? Because as an industry, we are doing so much non-value added stuff. And that is the hardest bit, to agree what to stop doing. But that's also where most of the value sits. And then finally, what is good enough? What would work? And if you answer those questions and put all the answers together and mix it all up, it creates fantastic value.
Thank you, Øyvind. I actually had another question, but you spent so long answering the first one that I
sorry.
don't have time.
I was a bit carried away, you know.
I know you are. But I'll tell you a little bit of an anecdote. One of your colleagues had carried out a review of this, we call it Subsea Alliance, and he called me up and he said, well, Karl, I have a problem. And I asked him, yes, fine, what is it? I can't understand who is Subsea 7 and who is Aker BP. And I said, that's not a problem, that's success. So why are we doing this? Well, obviously, we're doing this to increase value in our companies. But I also ask you to reflect what kind of value you're creating for the Norwegian society if we actually do manage to reduce the average development cost on the Norwegian continental shelf by 50%. So when we talk about this hyper-collaboration, this organizational model, we basically have three lenses. It's one for the companies, it's one for the Norwegian continental shelf and the industry, but it's also a society lens. 95% of every kroner I earn ends in some way, shape, or form in the pockets of the Norwegian government. And I hope they are far better at utilizing it for social purposes than we are as an oil and gas company. And that means that this hyper-collaboration, this way of reducing waste in the value chain, actually also takes on quite a lot of social meaning, at least here in Norway. So thank you all for listening, even though we're a bit over.
Yeah.